Man, oh man. All right, guys, what's going on? Sombra here again with a reminder, periodical reminder that if you don't listen to drum and bass, you are probably failing in every single aspect of your life. Sombra Del Piso here back once again with another episode of Peruse the News with Sombra, the captain of the cruise. You know, we're not feeling any blues, but if you do, you know, do what you do and watch the Peruse the News, you know, view the Peruse the News. This is episode 5. I got a lot of interesting articles to say, to explain, to talk about to you guys today. So as per usual, like, comment, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So we got some interesting stuff. Let's begin with something that we all sort of know but we just don't really talk about, especially in this day and age. Or if we do talk about it, it's like a passing mention or just flying by in a conversation just as some sort of fodder to keep the conversation going with someone that you'd rather not speak to. I don't know. That doesn't apply to me, but I'm just imagining. This article is by the Scientific American, and the title is "Americans Are Lonelier Than Europeans in Middle Age." This is so interesting. The lack of a safety net in the US is a big factor that explains why Americans feel lonelier than Danes or Swedes. Well, remember, I think Danish people and Swedish people are high on the list for the happiest types of people in the world, right? Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrums, I think America is sort of on the low end, around with England and other couple Western European countries. So this is not surprising at all. Remember, the Danes take the cake all the time. They win in that competition of the happiest person. The pandemic normalized remote work, online grocery delivery, and Peloton workouts, all of which are very, very solo, solipsistic activities. So there's not a lot of, I mean, of course there's like multiplayer versions of this, right? You could do remote work with a friend. You can go out and get your groceries, or you could just, you know, order groceries with a friend, I guess. Do Peloton workouts, do like a swap with a friend. The idea is a lot of these things that they were just talking about can be inclusive with other people. It's just people choose the easier route. They'll rather be by themselves, which, I mean, to what end, right? To what end? Americans' growing home-based to-do lists make the US a country with one of the most productive workforces in the world, as we know, but at what cost? In recent years, we've lost many of the touch points of social interaction, whether in the workplace, grocery store, or gym, that make us uniquely human. Isolation has long been a problem for older American retirees, widowed people, or those struggling with health problems that force them to be homebound. A growing body of research, however, shows that for many Americans, loneliness is creeping into the middle-age years. So I'm going to tell you something about this because it was interesting. They said we lost, in the beginning here, they said that we lost a lot of touch points of social interaction in the workplace, grocery store, or gym. The thing is, a lot of people choose not to really speak to other people. That's really what it is. They tend to be by themselves. They tend to keep to themselves. In the gym, I'm gonna tell you, at least for me, I'm always talking to someone. I must have been going to that gym for over a year now, and I just talk to everyone. It was the same when I went to Colombia. Within the first week of me going to that gym, I knew most of the people in that gym. And Spanish is the main language, and I'm not even stellar with my Spanish knowledge. You just have to, I think people are just not reaching out to each other. People would rather stay by themselves, or they're just so used to judging the outward appearance of an individual based on parameters that have been created by them by social media and whatever else, is that they look at a person and this doesn't seem like the person I want to talk with, and then they just keep to themselves, and then they blame some sort of extraterrestrial force for their loneliness. It's like you gotta talk to people, connect. We're human beings. We can't be that different, right? We all have things in common. We live in the same city for the most part, or we're currently inhabit the same space. We gotta have like something in common, so communicate. In the grocery store too, I'm always going to Whole Foods. You know, there's a certain demographic in there. These guys, you know, they're mostly transplants, you know, people that are responsible for this gentrification wave. But like, that doesn't mean that you should judge them. Just talk to them, talk to people. This whole issue of loneliness can be solved if we just connect with each other, and we're just not doing that because I don't know if it's fear or just preconceived notions about the appearance of another individual. Paid vacation is another workplace benefit that may play a role in loneliness by providing people with the time off necessary to strengthen familial bonds. I knew familial was the word I was looking for in the last Peruse the News session. I knew it. Strengthen familial bonds and friendships through time spent outside of work. In the Netherlands, another nation where the prevalence of loneliness is much lower than it is in the US, full-time employees are entitled to a minimum of 20 days of paid leave per year. That's nuts. What? I wish I had 20 days of mandatory 20 days of paid leave. I'm out. I'm going to South America. The US now stands alone as the only developed nation in the world with no federal law providing for paid leave. Do you hear this crazy codswallop? The US broadcasts itself to all the corners, crevices, empty spaces of the world that it is the best nation. Come here to be successful and achieve the decades-long goal of the American dream. And when most people come here, most foreigners, I've spoken with them, I'm friends with many people that moved here, they realize that, first of all, a lot of people tend to be very, very cliquish. They keep to themselves. You're working consistently, so you don't really get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, your intense labor. And even if you were working like, that general 9 to 5 days a week, Monday through Friday schedule, the expenses in the US are just so high, and we're not even talking about cities like here, New York City, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Miami. We're not talking about the expenses of those cities. The cost of living is just so high that you don't even get to utilize what you've spent so much mental energy, physical energy achieving. It's crazy. We have so many technological advancements. You go to any other place in like South America, Southeast Asia, there's not a lot of the quality of life innovations and inventions that you would see prevalently in the US. But we still don't have paid leave. There's no law mandating paid leave. It's crazy. They just want us to be on this wheel, consistently working and aspiring to a dream that will never be of reach, or it's out of reach for the majority of the individuals that live in this accursed nation. This is insane. Poor health outcomes, of course, we know this because poor health outcomes are also tied to the effects of stress, which is produced being in an ecosystem like this where you're just forced to consistently work just to maintain your life. Like, so many people keep up this pretense of not being lonely or being sound of mental health, but in reality, these guys are lonely as hell. Tyler said it himself in that song in Scumflower something, I forget that album. One of the latest album or the latest album before. No, the album before the latest album. He was like, I'm not gonna lie, I've been lonely as, people are just lonely as hell and they just don't want to admit it. All right, so let's go into another article. We're gonna have some science fiction, right? This is crazy. I don't know if this is true. Written by Victor Tangerman, right? From the Futurism magazine. The title of the article says, scientists identify 7 star systems that may be hosting alien megastructures. Like, how do you know? How the hell do you know? What is the metric that you're judging by? Like, how are you gleaning this information? What do you even know what an alien megastructure would look like? Because if you would know what one looked like, we would have like blueprints of them or just be en route to creating these megastructures in our universe, in our galaxy. What the hell does Victor know? Let's see what he has to say. Dyson near. Astronomers have identified 7 star systems in our galaxy that could potentially host a Dyson sphere, a hypothetical megastructure an alien civilization could build around a star or black hole to capture most of its power in the form of radiation. I think, you know what it is? That sounds very powerful in theory. That sounds very, very powerful in like the world of imagination and reverie. I just think that people are too lonely, they're too cliquish, they are too worried about preserving themselves and their lives here in this finite life, in this finite space, physical reality. This stretches on to countries, which is why so much of us are just separated instead of just working together to get one of these Dyson spheres created due to pooling our resources and human capital and intellectual property. We could easily get a Dyson sphere. I feel like this is easy, especially based on the technology that we have now. It's just that we just are interested in building up revenue so we can try to flex and intimidate other countries that we're not trying to help, that we just want to maintain dilapidated, reduced, impoverished state with. It's crazy. Of course, it's an entirely theoretical idea. After all, we haven't even discovered the existence of extraterrestrial life, let alone an intelligent alien civilization. But scientists do suspect it's still possible, and tantalizingly, if these megastructures do exist, they should be visible to us due to the tremendous amount of infrared radiation being released by such a structure as the star heats it up. Can you imagine like just some sort of structure built around like a star, right? Or just stars in general, to absorb its energy, transfer that energy to various artificial colonies or planets that we'd be able to inhabit. That's nuts. That's really, really crazy. Like I said, we can reach this in this lifetime for sure. It's just that we are just too interested in just sticking to ourselves and making some indisciplined and frankly obese man rich. This is why we're not going to ever achieve this, at least not anytime soon. 7 dwarfs, Victor talks about in this next part. In a recent study published in the Journal of Monthly Notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, a team of researchers created a computer program to hunt for infrared excess emissions in our galaxy. That's very interesting. So I'm guessing they use that to try to figure out if there's a possibility of these Dyson spheres in other galaxies, because if obviously the structure is utilizing so much energy, is controlling so much energy, because do you understand how much energy a star produces, like our sun? It's insane. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of infrared emissions, and this computer program, would be able to detect that. It's very interesting. They created a list of 7 strong candidates that may be hosting Dyson spheres by analyzing observations from the European Space Agency's Gaia satellite, and as well as more infrared survey results from other ground and space-based telescopes. The 7 candidates are all M dwarf stars, meaning they're both smaller and dimmer than our sun. Even so, our sun produces so much energy, it's huge. So anything that's slightly smaller than that is still gonna be a sufficient, very, very abundant source of energy. So feasibly, Dyson spheres would be very, very successful around those M dwarf stars. For instance, it might be something that happens very rarely, like if 2 planets collide and produce an enormous amount of material, says co-author in New York University physics professor David Hogg. I think it's most likely to be a natural phenomenon. So this is nuts. Basically, these guys are saying there might be structures. I mean, based off of what our infrared emission computer program is picking up, there might be some planets out there that have Dyson sphere structures, megastructures built around it, which hint to possibly some existence of alien civilization. We just need to, I think, pool our resources together as a planet, as a world power, and try to invent transportation vehicles that can go to these galaxies and sort of glean this information, actually find out if alien civilizations are actually there, and try to prove and confirm the existence of these Dyson spheres. That's what I think. My feedback on this is that it just sort of correlates with the main idea of the first article. We're just too caught up as a species with like our personal issues. We're worried about whether the Jewish people are actually the Israelites. We are worried if the black people were actually the Israelites. We are worried about if China actually owns more of India than India says they own. We're worried about all these things, which are very important, but if we put those things aside, join together as a world power, pool our intellectual resources, we can easily utilize the power of the sun and create like a better existence for us all. We're just not interested in that. We just want to keep groups of individuals poor and just prove our legacies based off of allegorical religious texts. This is the life that we're living in. This is the life that we're living in. All right, last article, very, very interesting stuff. It's by an editorialist that I used to read a lot of. Her name is Julie Jargon. She writes exclusively, I think, for the Wall Street Journal. She writes a lot of stuff. Tech related, I remember that with her. She's writing about today, title of the article, "A teacher did all he could to keep kids off phones. He's quitting in frustration." And I would do the same, because the grip, the very, very powerful, strong grip right, that social media has and the pop culture has, and our kids nowadays is so tight and so strong. It's just, you're just fighting a crazy uphill battle. Like what Sisyphus was doing with that rock, pushing it up the hill. It's like if you are a teacher in this day and age trying to keep children off their phones, it's like you have a Dyson sphere and you are trying to push it with one man up a 90-degree hill. That's how intense of a battle you're having with trying to get kids off their cell phones. It's impossible. You can't even get adults off their phones. They're so interested in these false realities that social media creates for them that there's no way you can tell them to get off their phones, man. It's nuts. Let's see what Julie has to say. Mitchell Rutherford in science. Mitchell Rutherford has taught biology at a public high school for 11 years. He's quitting after this semester because he's tired of trying to engage students who are lost in their phones. I feel you, Mitchell. Schools are losing teachers for a variety of reasons, and phones factor into decisions to leave. Dozens of teachers have told me they spend more time policing kids' phone use than they do actually teaching. For Rutherford, a 35-year-old teacher who once embraced technology, seeing kids checked out and, in his view, addicted, robbed him of the joy of teaching. Because they're not listening at all. These kids are just like, can you imagine? The parents at home, it starts with the parents. The parents at home, they do not even want to involve themselves in their kids' lives so actively based on their diets, based on their physical habits. A lot of these guys, the parents, are just not very disciplined, and they have to work excessive amounts of hours anyway to maintain their lives here in the US. Having to allocate time to take care of their children and actively be in their lives, that's a hassle. So what they do is that they give them the latest phones, and then they just have them on, just play these random games, scrolling through social media, going on YouTube. And these content creators, me, myself included, are the new teachers, are the new instructors, are the new presidents, the new parents of these kids. And these kids are just not getting a proper education. They're not actually connecting. And this is what perpetuates this whole loneliness, solipsistic culture that we have here in the US, in the Western world. I can understand why teachers have dialed out, especially if you're trying your best. You tell the same kid like 6 times a day, probably even more. And it's one kid out of like the 20 that they probably teach. Listen, you got to get off your phone. We're going into math. Listen, we're going into, we're talking about the Bronte sisters. Hey, we're going to talk about the Divine Comedy. You got to get off your phones. Let's pay attention now. And then the kids just don't find any interest in that. What's going on with that bird there? I think that bird probably has a broken wing. He can't fly. I don't know, that's invoking a lot of sadness in me. He's unable, he broke his wing, he broke something. Damn it. Damn it. Anyway, let's continue with this. I just hate seeing death, in any form. I would check out as a teacher as well if I told a kid a million times every single day to let go of their phones and they just don't listen. And then of course they give you back talk, and then the parents validate that behavior. Of course, the teachers have way more behavioral aptitude than I ever could have, because I'm telling you, the generation of young people now are just, they're done. They're done. Let's see what else Julie Jargon has to say. Julie Jargon. I think that's definitely a pseudonym. We know this. Because jargon is like, I think she's trying to be ironic, because it's just like, jargon is just like a whole bunch of words that don't necessarily mean anything in a sentence. But she's actually, an editorialist that has to convey information through well-put sentences. So I guess it's a little joke there, I'm guessing. Behavioral problems and absenteeism have been problems since students returned to Sauraro High School in Tucson, Arizona after pandemic closures. Back then, Rutherford left campus exhausted every day, but felt kids were relearning how to socialize. At the start of the school year, the students seemed much better behaved, leading Rutherford and fellow teachers to think that they finally turned a corner, but the students' quietude masked deeper discontent. The students would put on headphones in class and tune out. That's nuts, saying it helped with their anxiety. He says there was this low energy, apathy, and isolation. First of all, this whole prevalence of anxiety in young people, and people my age too, I'm 32, is actually insane to me. I definitely think it's not some spillover from the pandemic and people not being able to socialize for that period of time because we were all stuck in lockdowns. I just think that it's just our diets, our physical habits, not our like physical diets, like what we're eating, even though that probably lends to it in some sort of biological way, but it has to be our habits of our phones. A lot of us are just consistently on our phones. We listen to all this information and we identify with a lot of these things that people are telling us about ourselves. We just sort of lean into these negative things that people are telling us. Oh, it's natural to be anxious because you are in a world predominated by males that make more money. Or on the flip side, oh, you are a male and women don't really want to talk to other individuals like you because you look a certain way. So it is right to feel anxious. And it's like, stop listening, guys, you don't have anxiety. Stop listening to this nonsense. Like, just don't allow the outside world to dictate who you need to be or who you would want to be, If I was a teacher and I see a kid putting on their headphones, I'm telling them, listen, how are you going to listen to the lectures? And then they tell me, oh, it's for my anxiety. It's like, what? You didn't have enough anxiety to answer that question when I addressed it to you in the class just now? Then take off your headphones, you gotta listen to this. And then, by the way, these are the same individuals that companies are gonna be hiring over individuals that are actually have the aptitude and actually have the skill repertoire for the jobs. It's like, I just don't get it. The US is a screwed place, I'm telling you. There's just so many things wrong with this country. A growing number of teachers, psychologists, and lawmakers say smartphones and social media are sapping kids' motivation and well-being. You think if you have these social media programs like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube that have a whole plethora of user content that sort of brings in information and experiences from all around the world, from various levels of life, in result of which is trivializing those experiences, of course kids are gonna be sapped of motivations. Like, why am I even doing this? I see this guy that's making X amount of money on YouTube and he said marriage sucks. So it's like, we were given these programs and we weren't told how to moderate our use of these programs. It's nuts, this is crazy. The argument that technology is creating mental health problems for teens has become controversial, with skeptics describing the fuss over smartphones as a moral panic. Yeah, because these people, if it happens to adults my age. There was this girl I used to work with. She was like one of my best friends. I used to work with her at this restaurant. She was his general manager. She was consistently on Instagram. She was always on her phone every time we hung out. It was crazy. We had fun, we did like hiking, went to restaurants and whatnot, but this woman was always on her phone looking at absolutely nothing. Social media and our excessive use of smartphones is a problem. It's a huge problem. Granted, I do need you guys to use, social media more so you could find my content and sort of get entertained by this. But at the end of the day, you need to have a moderate your use of the smartphones, of technology, because these things have integrated themselves very quickly. It's like the scarab beetle and blue beetle, or it's like the symbiote. It integrates with the organism so quickly, and before you know it, all your habits and all of your behaviors have changed. A millennial and digital native, because Rutherford is 35, Rutherford used to think that technology had a place in the classroom and that students could be taught to manage their phone use. This year showed him the grim truth. Yes, because we got a whole bunch of kids that are just not listening because they're watching these content creators disrupt reality or live lives that they think that they would like to live, but in reality they don't really know much because they're young. In an effort to show kids, I like this Rutherford because he has hope, In an effort to show kids how much better they'd feel without their phones, he took his students on nature walks, taught them mindfulness and meditation techniques, and taught a unit on the importance of sleep. I was employing all the tools in the tool belt, and more than half the class didn't seem to be trying at all, he says. Because the thing is, we are so mired in this social media swamp right now, and smartphone use, technology use swamp, that you need our brains are messed up. I was about to curse. Our brains are messed up. We are now, our attention spans are very, very low. A lot of us don't even read books, right? We're listening to podcasts. We're watching videos on how to live your life, all that stuff. So doing something as slow paced, and of course, in addition to high-speed internet, providing all of this material very, very quickly. So a lot of people are not even watching the whole podcast through. A lot of people are not watching these whole clips and shorts the whole way through. Our attention spans are messed up. We're used to things very, very quick. Rutherford introducing an activity like this, which is very, very slow paced, very, even though it's normal pace, it's slow paced to these kids that are used to this accelerated receiving of information. You're gonna lose them completely. We have to find some alternative to this onslaught of namely useless information that we're receiving from social media and technology. It's almost like what happened with action films. Paul Greengrass, he's the director of the Bourne series. I'm a big fan, the Bourne series. He's wearing just very, very muted colors, and he's just this ex-American spy that caught amnesia and is just trying to live his life and trying to figure it out. What Paul Greengrass did to revolutionize action films was, instead of having like in Enter the Dragon, you have like a shot of just people of two individuals fighting each other on a very, very normal pace. What he's done is that he's like sort of brought the viewer into the action by the way he cut action scenes. So one action scene that would be like 3 minutes, which is incredibly long, is cut up like hundreds of thousands of times from all these different angles. And it sort of immerses the viewer into the action scene. What that also did was it changed how action scenes were shot forever from that point, because Liam Neeson's Taken was shot within that same sort of format, and other action films after that, John Wick, so on and so forth. So our brains are now used to this, and unless we're providing an alternative to that, where we could still receive information, but also in this way where our brains can intake that information, then we're just we're a little screwed. I'm gonna be completely honest. We're a little screwed. All in all, guys, we are in this swamp of heavy, excessive, overabundant social media use and technology use. And unless we get to the crux of this problem, we show people an alternative, or we show them the inevitable fate of consistently absorbing technology as they've been absorbing technology, then we're just going to be the future leaders of this society are going to be very, very interesting people indeed. So with that being said, that's it. That's all I got to talk to you guys about today. If you like that content, like, comment, subscribe. I always say share the video with some peers, and don't let this world get you down. Remember, it's presided by a false god that perpetuates these horrible activities and habits in order to maintain some sort of control, because individuals will need some sort of savior to get them out of this muck, right? And stay radiant. I'll see you guys in the next one.